Hi everyone, I'm Phil Klissa with the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2020 Self-Determination Conference. We've been planning for this conference all year long, and while we had to make the tough decision to make it a virtual conference, we know it was the right decision to make to keep all of us safe and healthy. It takes a lot of work to put a conference like this together, so I want to take a minute to thank my colleagues at the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, our planning committee, our partners, People First Wisconsin and In Control Wisconsin, Promote Local, and our DHS tech support staff. Without you, we couldn't do it. Virtual platforms are new to all of us, so be patient with us and be patient with yourself. I want to point out a few things about the conference before we get started. On the conference website are all the links. Check out our tutorials. We have lots of how-to videos on how to make your conference experience a positive one. We have a Zoom information and support lounge. Go there if you have any questions or problems, and there'll be a live person there to help you problem solve. If you can't get on Zoom, you can call for assistance as well. And if you're looking for continuing education credits, during each session you attend, click on the chat and there will be a link to a survey. Complete the survey for each session you wish to get credit for. During the Zoom sessions, we will keep your audio and video off until it's time for audience participation. And during the network breaks, don't forget to visit all the micro businesses and don't forget to use your $10 off coupon. And while you're visiting the exhibitors, make sure you bring your bingo card with you. They have the bingo chips and they will be able to give you those numbers. If you get a bingo, you can take your card to the support lounge and you will be entered into a drawing for a special surprise. And there's so much more to tell you about. Like today at lunch, don't forget to watch the Die Hard presentation. See if you can guess who they are. Then at 3:30, we'll all be ready to get up and dance. Or should I say, get down and dance with DJ Joe, as we celebrate 20 years of People First Wisconsin. And if that's not enough, join us after hours for a movie and hang out with us and visit with old friends. So come on, grab a cup of coffee and your fuzzy slippers and enjoy the conference.
It's a big word that means something extraordinarily simple. It's helping people live ordinary and extraordinary lives, just like anyone else.
Coming together enthusiastically, no better place for you and me to be. We need each other, all need to be free. Won't you come fly with me? The time is now, the time is right. For lifting off, for taking flight. Take control and we'll reach new heights. Won't you come fly with me? Ooh-wee, ride me high. Glad you're here, thanks for coming by. On the wings of freedom, we're gonna fly. We all need to be free. Everyone making contributions, getting beyond all the confusion, working together, finding solutions. Everybody gotta be free. Self-direction, self-determination. Here's the place to get your inspiration. Listen to each other in conversation. Endless possibilities. An invitation for collaboration. Motivation for transformation. The destination, imagination. Won't you come fly with me? everyday lives for me and you. Building co-ops, networks, community too. Keep our eyes on the prize, what we're gonna do. Endless possibilities.
Self-determination is not just a word, it's my life.
Power is choice, will, and determination.
I come here to advocate for myself and for others.
This is our first time that we came to the conference and our first time that we traveled alone.
My mission possible is to purchase a new accessible home in Milwaukee.
Do you think you should be an advocate? I think almost anyone can be.
I make sure my voice is heard, and the voice is heard of others that can't speak for themselves.
Me encanta todo lo que hay en esta conferencia. Gracias por invitarnos.
My superpower is advocating for the rights of others with disabilities.
In the future, I want to see more meetings like this.
Ooh-wee, you ride me high. Glad you're here. Thanks for coming by. On the wings of freedom, we're gonna fly. We all need to be free. Ooh-wee, ride me high. Glad you're here.
Thanks for coming by.
On the wings of freedom,
we're
gotta fly.
We all need to be free. We all need to be free.
Welcome to the 2020 Self-Determination Conference, turning vision into reality. We're happy to see you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 13th Annual Wisconsin Self-Determination Conference. Hi, my name's Beth Swedeen. I'm the Executive Director with the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, and we are thrilled to be presenting this conference today. And in fact, this is our first ever virtual conference, so welcome aboard for that as well. It's going to be the same great set of fantastic breakout sessions led by self-advocates that'll help you live your best life as a person with a disability. Self-determination really means just making your own choices and having enough good information so that you're making good choices. And that's what this conference is all about. We'll also have many of the favorite items that many of you come back for year after year. We're going to have a virtual dance party, we'll have our Die Hard Awards, and of course, we'll have a virtual marketplace with our micro enterprises. Those are businesses run by people with disabilities, so get your credit card ready. We are so excited too about our keynote sessions and the ability to bring you so much great information through those. Wisconsin's disability community is very diverse, and that makes sense because disability is a natural part of the human condition. So we are so excited that we're having our first keynote focus on the different communities around Wisconsin and what they're doing to connect and support people with disabilities and their families. Oh, and one last shout out, we want to remind you, People First Wisconsin, it's their 20th anniversary. So congratulations, People First Wisconsin, and welcome to our first keynote panel.
Hi, everyone out there. It's nice to see you. Hi, I'm Ashley Matthew. I'm a BPDD board member and a self-advocate. I know it's different this year with this conference being virtual, but we can still have a lot of fun and learn stuff. I'm here to introduce the opening keynote, celebrating our diverse community. In the next hour, you will hear stories from people representing a few of our rich cultures in Wisconsin. Our Native American communities, our Black communities, our Hmong communities, our Hispanic communities, and our LGBTQ communities. And now on with the program, celebrating our diverse community.
Welcome to my community.
Welcome to my community.
Bienvenido a mi comunidad.
our Native American communities.
My name is Cheryl Funmaker. I live here in Wisconsin Dells with my family and amongst our people, the Ho-Chunk Nation. This is one of our villages. Today we're at our powwow grounds in Nijala. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy watching our children dancing and the support that our children with disabilities have from their family as well as our community. My husband, Kenneth Funmaker Jr., is going to do a land acknowledgement.
Hello, we are here today to celebrate our children and to do a few dances for you in the conference. Maikare Rajada, Ken Funmaker Jr. ga hingaide, Wangshik Rajada, Hunchkataga hingaide, Hunch Yaki Karatwa Nangshana, Nish Eja Hachi Anje. At this time, I'm going to read a land acknowledgement for the conference. Each of us, no matter where we live at here in Wisconsin, look upon the land that was cared for by one of 11 tribes that call Wisconsin home. The greater Wisconsin Dells area in the Ho-Chunk language is called Nijachi. Many tribes, including the Ho-Chunk, established tribes close to bodies of water because water is life. The land under the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells, where we normally meet for this conference, continues to be one of the villages for the Ho-Chunk people. The Ho-Chunk were forcibly removed by the United States government at least 6 times to Minnesota, to Iowa, to South Dakota, and Nebraska. Ho-Chunk people repeatedly returned because our stories tell us we belong here. There are many stories of bravery, resilience, and resistance represented in the return to our villages. Today you will see that the Ho-Chunk and all tribes continue to celebrate our children. Today you will see that we still sing songs and dance in the places our ancestors walked. Pinagigi, thank you. Have a good conference.
This is the grand entry. All of our dancers come into the arena. That is called a grand entry song. It's mainly for the audience so they can see all the dancers, all the participants. You can see everybody that's going to participate. It's kind of like a little parade. Without our drummers and singers, we wouldn't have any dancing. These guys are really important. They're kind of really the main guys of a celebration or the powwow or the gathering. Most of our songs in the Ho-Chunk Nation are sang in our language. In the Ho-Chunk Nation, most of our singers are kind of family-based, and that's how we kind of pass on our songs to the next generation.
In our Native communities, we are spread throughout the state and face systemic barriers related to geography, income, disparities in equity issues that could be addressed, not just for Native people, but for others throughout the state. So I'd like to acknowledge, the challenging job that some of our families face as they navigate the systems, for their children. Organizations such as the board, WBPDD, are wonderful and have a potential to address these multiple needs across multiple geographies and ethnicities and cultural needs that our families navigate every day across the years.
Our first exhibition is our jingle dress dancer. They kind of refer that style to kind of be a medicine dress. That style of dress comes from up in northern Wisconsin or northern Minnesota. And our next style is men's fancy. The boys are high stepping and they have colorful fluorescent colors. That's to kind of catch the eye. They're really in shape. Really athletic dance. The guys that perform that, you'll see that they need to be on every beat of the drum. And our next dance is our grass dancer. We got this dance from the Omaha people. This is meant to kind of mimic the grass flowing in the wind, the prairie grass. So that's why, he has fringes. That's when he dances, those fringes are moved just like grass. And we have HMONG applique. You can tell by her dress and her necklaces and her shirt that she's woodland style also. And she's accompanying her grandson. Our children with disabilities aren't excluded from these dances. They're encouraged to participate, and most of them do, at all age levels. We want everybody to have a good time in the circle. It's meant for everybody to come together and to see one another, and that's how they make friends, or they see their relatives. Their relatives really like to see that. Really like to see them dance and participate. It's really kind of gratifying and therapeutic for both. To be involved and to be welcomed, that's what we strive for. And our last dance is our woodland dancer. And we have two women's fancy shawl dancers accompanying the woodland dancer. The woodland dancer is the brother, and the two girls are sisters. They're helping them out, keeping them on time. Our performers are children. At any age, they're allowed to learn how to dance, and encouraged to come into the circle and dance.
What's happened with Native people is because our population is so diminished, our histories and our stories and our cultural ways are more likely to be erased and overlooked. Native people are still here through great adversity. There's a lot of beauty in Native cultures, and from our creation stories they tell us. Our people have been caretakers of the land for who knows how long, for a very long time.
Our Hmong communities.
Hi, my name is Peng He. I'm the CEO of the HMONG Institute. The HMONG Institute is a nonprofit whose mission is empowering communities by educating, promoting, and preserving the Hmong heritage. Today, I wanted to share with you a little bit of the Hmong heritage, why we are in America, and the challenges in getting services for those with disabilities. The Hmong culture is over 5,000 years old. The Hmong originally lived in central China. In the 1860s, the Hmong migrated to Southeast Asia, settling in northern parts of Laos, Vietnam, and Thailand. The CIA secretly recruited the Hmong in the fight against communism during the Vietnam War. We were armed, trained, and paid by the US government. The US involvement in Laos was kept a secret from the general public because the US government did not want to be accused of breaking the 1962 Geneva Accord. It was estimated that over 50,000, or a third, of the Hmong were killed or wounded during the Vietnam War. In 1975, Vietnam and Laos fell to communist control, and the Hmong became enemy of the state. The Hmong fled Laos into Thailand as political refugees. Bun Vinai was the largest refugee camp. It was 400 acres in size, and at one point housed over 45,000 Hmong refugees with no running water. Many resettled in Canada, Australia, French Guiana, Germany, and the US as political refugees. This is why the Hmong are in America. One of the challenges the Hmong have in accessing services is due to the language barrier. Typical service providers do not have staff who speak Hmong or understand the culture. They often use the clinic model versus the community house model. In the clinic model, the waiting room is sterile, consisting of office chairs, a coffee table, and some reading magazines, and we've all been there. Providers don't speak Hmong. Hmong patients must go to the clinic to receive services. At the Hmong Institute, we use a community house model with staff that speak Hmong and understand the culture. We don't have a waiting room. What we have is a community room with a fireplace and couches where elders can sit and do different activities from sewing to arts and craft or receiving mental health services. If an elder cannot come to us, we go to their home to provide the services. Another challenge to getting services include cultural barriers. The Hmong are a community society, emphasizing the need of the community above those of the individual. We have very close-knit families. For the Hmong, family is very important. We tend to have large extended families living together. Getting married is essential in order to have a family. Traditionally, we look for someone that comes from a good, clean family. We try to avoid unclean families. Unclean families are families that may have a family member with a disability or families that have a history of illnesses or a misfortune. Thus, Hmong families do not take their children or family member who has a disability out in public because they don't want others to know that they have a family member with a disability, because it is their fear that no one will want to marry to that family. This cultural barrier causes the family to not seek services for the Hmong children or family member who has a disability. Traditionally, Hmong belief is a combination of animism and ancestral worship. Animism is the belief that every living thing has a spirit. For example, the tree outside your window has a spirit. If you wanted to cut the tree down for firewood or to build a shelter, you need to inform the tree spirit and ask for permission. Not doing so may anger the tree spirit and may come to you and take your spirit away, causing you to become sick. Traditionally, Hmong believe that when you are sick, it means your spirit has left your body and may be lost in the spirit world. A shaman or a spiritual healer may be needed to go into the spirit world to negotiate with the spirit you've offended and to guide your spirit home to make you feel better. Traditionally, Hmong also believe in reincarnation. The Hmong believe that you need to live a good, honest life in order to be reincarnated or born to a higher level in the next life. When a person passes away, no foreign objects can be buried with the deceased. If a foreign object such as a plastic button or your metal hip replacement is buried with the deceased, it is believed that that foreign object will cause a physical deformity or some type of affliction in the next life. Additionally, Hmong elders have had historical distrust for Western doctors. Traditionally, Hmong have used herbs to cure ailments. During the Vietnam War, Western medicine was introduced. Doctors in the refugee camps thought because the Hmong patient couldn't read or write or understand English, they must be primitive and stupid. They looked down on the Hmong for using herbs to heal rather than Western medicine. Western healthcare providers called them names, yelled at them, and mistreated them because they knew very little of the Hmong culture. This caused a lot of distrust for Western healthcare providers. Much of that distrust continues today, as many physicians are not culturally competent in serving their Hmong patients. They still don't understand why a Hmong person would decline a life-saving operation and instead use herbal medicine and have a shaman perform a soul-calling ceremony. They don't understand the Hmong patient isn't just making decisions about this life, but also about the next life. At the Hmong Institute, we host an annual Hmong Health Summit to educate healthcare providers to be more culturally competent in serving their Hmong patient. We also host a Hmong American Certificate program for Edgewood College for anyone who wants to be more culturally competent in serving the Hmong community. We also have a mental health program called Hmong Kashia that provides culturally and linguistically responsive mental health services to Southeast Asian elders, who many suffer from PTSD as a result of the genocide in Cambodia and Hmong veterans who fought for the US and Laos during the Vietnam War. So as you can see, the Hmong heritage is one of self-determination to have kept the culture, language, and heritage alive for over 5,000 years and survived 2 genocides. I encourage you to get to know the Hmong community, and more importantly, to get to know your Hmong neighbors. Thank you for joining us at the conference and for having me here today. I would like to introduce Dee Her. She is a resilient Hmong woman who lives with a disability. She will share her story on how she overcomes many of the cultural challenges, both in the Hmong culture and in the Western culture, as a Hmong woman.
Hello, my name is Duzong Her, and I am a proud member of the Hmong community. I'm also a proud representative of those who are differently abled. In my young adult life, I lost both of my kidneys to an autoimmune disease, and I started dialysis. As soon as I started dialysis, a number of other health problems came up. By the time I was 21, I had survived 2 aneurysms, 1 stroke, a very long coma, and a kidney transplant. Now, I have since lost that kidney transplant, and I've been on dialysis now for the past 15 years. Oftentimes in the Hmong community, those people who deal with physical illness like myself, those people who deal with physical disabilities or even mental disabilities, they're oftentimes ostracized. I had a great aunt once tell me, I feel so bad for you, because you see, if you were normal, you would have a man who wanted to marry you, and then you would be able to have children. And if you had children, then you would have a family. But since you're sick and you have a physical disability, oh, there could never be a man that loved you, and therefore you could never have a family. And if you don't have a family, you could never be normal. She pitied me because I had a physical disability. She pitied me because I had an illness. She pitied me because I was on dialysis. And oftentimes that's what happens in the Hmong community. There is pity to those people who have physical illness, who have physical disabilities, who have mental illness. I refuse to believe that I have a disability. I just have a different ability. I can still be a contributing member to society. I am still a good person. I just have abilities that are different. And when people look at us, I don't want them to think that I am disabled or that I am any less capable of doing things. My goal as a Hmong woman is to change that train of thought in the Hmong community. I want to show them that we are capable of doing things. It may not be what they are doing, but what we are able to do is still good. What we are able to do, even as different as they are, is still needed within our society. And I want to especially show Hmong people who are differently abled that they too are just as important. That the things that they do for us, for our society, for our culture as Hmong people, is just as important, whether there are Hmong people who believe it or not. I am proud to be Hmong, and I'm also proud to be differently abled.
Hello, my name is Hua Yang, and I'm Hmong. I'm a board member for BPDD, and I live in Madison. I am the oldest of 7 kids. My parents, along with my grandparents, all came to the U.S. as refugees. Growing up as a Hmong daughter came with a lot of responsibilities and expectations. Early on, I learned how to cook, clean, and take care of my siblings. As a Hmong daughter, you were to uphold your parents' name and to not lose face, or not have your parents lose face. Because in the community and outside the community, everyone knew everyone. So when you run into other Hmong elders, they would ask you, who is your parents? That's almost always the question, is who are your parents? And if they don't know your parents, then they say, who's your grandparents? And usually when you do that, then they know, oh, what clan or what family you're a part of. So that was really important. As a young girl, I learned traditional Hmong dance. These dances that we learned, we would present them at a New Year celebration. So here in Madison, we have a once a year Hmong New Year celebration that's celebrated actually the weekend of Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, this year will not be happening due to COVID. At the Hmong New Year, people come together to enjoy music, dance, and food, arts and crafts, and then welcoming the new year in hopes of health and prosperity. It's definitely a time where you would come. I've always said best dressed. The Hmong New Year was a time to see family and friends and also to meet people. That's also a place that you could possibly meet your spouse. So back in our country, so my parents are from Laos. That was when you might meet your husband and your wife. This performance was done at last year's Hmong New Year celebration in Madison. In this song, the girl is expressing her love for this guy. So a few things I wanted to share with you guys. The background here is a big tapestry. It's the Hmong cloth story, or we call it the Pandao. It's telling the story of the Hmong coming to the U.S. It's showing the U.S. coming and asking the Hmong to help during the Vietnam War, and then fleeing Laos. And then you see this huge river, and that's the Mekong River, where families had to cross, and a lot of people died, whether from drowning or being shot or being captured. But once they were able to get across the Mekong River, they were into Thailand. So at the bottom here, it's showing them doing the paperwork, coming to the US, and then them arriving in US. I wanted to also show you guys a couple of items. So when I was talking about traditional clothing, this is one of our necklaces that we wear with traditional clothing. Very, very pretty, but very heavy. And after wearing it for a few hours, especially during the New Year, it definitely bruises you quite a bit in the back of your neck. I don't wear this anymore, but this is one that my mom detailed for me. All of this is embroidered by hand. So there's the shirt, there's a pocket that has a coin, and with the coin, back in the days, they used to say that the more coin you had on your traditional clothing meant the more wealthier your family is. But these days, it's not so much that type of clothing anymore. It's more simplistic. So here's one that I got maybe a couple years ago that doesn't have anything heavy on it at all. The coloring is more simple. There's still some embroidery, but not so much. Thank you for listening to me speak about the Hmong culture and a little bit about myself. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful conference.
Our Hispanic communities. Our next speaker is Hector Portillo. Hector will give his speech in Spanish. To hear his speech in English, click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and choose English.
Mi nombre es Héctor Mario Portillo Hernández. Nací en una humilde familia con algunas vicisitudes y sueños truncados, pero impregnada de valor para encontrar caminos a la resiliencia. Fui bendecido al nacer en una de las mejores ciudades de México, es Delicias, Chihuahua, el estado más grande de México, ese país que se caracteriza por su nobleza y su recio carácter, donde los obstáculos son oportunidades y las carencias son incentivos para el éxito. Obviamente, una vez más, estoy hablando de México. Tengo hijos maravillosos con talentos únicos. Un hijo de 20 años que no es verbal y está diagnosticado con autismo. Aún recuerdo las últimas palabras que él mencionó cerca de 18 años atrás y me aferro a ellas para no perder la esperanza de que volveré a escuchar su voz. Siempre la esperanza está ahí. No hablaré hoy del autismo en este momento. En su lugar mencionaré algunas experiencias, retos y alternativas que mi hijo ha experimentado a lo largo de su vida. En primer lugar, él está afectado con el espectro, aun cuando toda la familia experimenta situaciones colaterales propias de esta condición. La lucha día a día por ser aceptado en una sociedad egocéntrica que lo aísla de una vida social sana, tanto en la escuela como en la comunidad, han cobrado un alto precio en su persona. A sus 20 años vive en las sombras, sin un solo amigo que lo visite, que le hable, que le escriba. Cuando él se acerca a las personas, es rechazado o simplemente ignorado. Ay, Dios mío. Todo esto afecta, sin embargo, el cariño que la familia posee y tiene con él no ha disminuido y con eso él trata de salir adelante. Como todas las familias que tienen un miembro con necesidades especiales, la vida nuestra no es fácil. Cada día bregamos para salir adelante de esta situación. Mi familia ha encontrado caminos para potenciar la resiliencia en nuestro núcleo familiar y la compartimos con otras familias. Mi hijo nació en el año 2000, en El Paso, Texas. 18 meses después fue diagnosticado con autismo. En este lugar no había ningún tipo de servicios ni gente capacitada para ayudarnos o ayudarle a él a que mejorara su calidad de vida o su situación. No terapias, no escuela, no maestros que pudieran auxiliarle. Ante este panorama, mi esposa se dedicó a buscar dónde, en qué parte de Estados Unidos había servicios que pudiesen mejorar su calidad de vida y combatir la condición que él sufría, el autismo. Y hemos aquí, estamos en Wisconsin, estamos rodeados de hermosa gente. Cuando nos movimos del Paso hacia acá, vendimos todas nuestras propiedades, todas, casa, muebles, enseres. Nos venimos solo con $4,500 y 2 automóviles. Y la ropa que traíamos puesta y un que otro cambio. De esa manera llegamos aquí y hemos salido adelante gracias a Dios. Bueno, ahora hablaré de cómo nació Padres e Hijos en Acción. ¿Quiénes somos? ¿Qué hacemos? ¿A quiénes servimos? Nació debido a la necesidad de ofrecer servicios indispensables que no estaban disponibles en aquella época. Además de proveer asistencia técnica para navegar los sistemas de salud y escolar, educativa. Fueron los problemas que nosotros nos enfrentamos. Una vez que logramos aprender cómo hacerlo, tuvimos capacitaciones y experiencias propias, tratamos de pasarlo a las familias que sufren situaciones similares a nosotros. Distribuimos recursos, ofrecemos talleres informativos, actividades físicas, las cuales mejoran las habilidades motoras, finas y gruesas, pero también ofrecemos otros servicios como asesoría e información acerca de la tutela, de autodeterminación y empleo. De igualmente, y lo ponemos de gran importancia, es promovemos la participación paterna. En este sentido, la mayoría de las veces son madres solteras, pero en nuestro grupo hay muchos padres que se han involucrado y la figura paterna es indispensable e importante en el desarrollo y crecimiento de nuestros niños. Para ellos, ¿cuáles son los resultados inmediatos y alcanzables que Padres e Hijos en Acción tiene como meta? Bueno, tenemos 3 metas. A corto plazo, la meta es aumentar el conocimiento de cómo navegar y acceder a los servicios y recursos existentes en las familias hispanas que tienen niños en necesidades de cuidado de salud especial. Aumentar el conocimiento sobre la importancia del manejo del estrés entre las familias que tienen niños con cuidado de salud especial. A mediano plazo, buscamos aumentar el acceso a esas actividades para manejar el estrés de una manera cultural y lingüísticamente apropiadas entre las familias latinas. Promovemos el conocimiento, la aceptación y la inclusión de los niños y sus familias que tienen necesidades de cuidado de salud especial. Como meta de largo plazo, buscamos aumentar la independencia y el bienestar de los hispanos o latinos que tienen necesidad de salud de cuidado especial. Los retos de las familias latinas con hijos con necesidades especiales son los siguientes: la comunicación debido al lenguaje, el lenguaje, la discriminación, vivienda digna, respiro, transportación, insuficiente personal capacitado para cubrir las demandas de la población que requiere servicios especializados. En algunas ocasiones nos encontramos con la falta de documentos que amparen y respalden el derecho a recibir estos servicios. Ante este panorama nada alegador, Padres e Hijos en Acción ha enfrentado estos retos al implementar exitosamente programas y actividades. ¿Cuáles serían estos? Son los talleres de cocina y nutrición. El programa Respiro. Cuidar a un niño con necesidades especiales requiere de mucho corazón y de mucha paciencia, aparte de capacitación especial. Nosotros referimos a las familias con aquellas entidades que pueden ser útiles y que se pueden adaptar a las necesidades de esa familia. Hacemos los paseos en bicicleta como otra actividad. Las bicicletas que usamos son seguras, son adaptadas para los niños para que no pierdan ellos el equilibrio. Y algunas de las veces las mamás han aprendido a manejar bicicletas, los llamados triciclos. Otra de las actividades que tenemos, y bien importante para nosotros, es la jardinería. Tenemos una actividad que es la fiesta de Navidad. Es una convivencia entre familias, donde hay entrega de regalos a los niños con necesidades especiales y a sus hermanitos. Dichos obsequios tratan de cumplir con el deseo en la medida de lo posible de estos niños. ¿Qué es lo que necesitan? ¿Qué es lo que quieren? Ofrecemos asistencia técnica para navegar el sistema de educación y de salud. Sobre todo en la asistencia técnica nosotros promovemos talleres informativos como los IPs. Otros talleres que nosotros promovemos también son talleres de arte, de literatura. Asimismo, entregamos pañales, ropa infantil y algunos otros obsequios que pueden ser útiles para ellos, que la comunidad también nos dona a nosotros. También entregamos talleres o promovemos talleres de independencia, de empleo, de autodeterminación y buscamos posibles o potenciales empleadores para nuestros hijos que ya están en edad de buscar un empleo. Uno de los programas que tenemos es que ha sido de mucho éxito y de bendición para alcanzar más familias y distribuir la información es nuestro programa de radio. Este programa de radio lo tenemos en la movida 1480 cada segundo martes de cada mes y es de 9 a 10 de la mañana. Hemos alcanzado a mucha gente a través del estado e inclusive en nuestro país, México, que nuestras familias requieren. Quiero mencionar grandemente o de manera muy especial a Beth y su equipo de colaboradores en WBPDD y también a Paola Pérez de Wyman Center por su importante apoyo a padres e hijos y a la comunidad latina que tiene hijos con necesidades especiales.
Ahora, por favor, presione el botón en la parte de abajo de su pantalla para volver a escuchar el audio en español. Gracias.
Our Black communities.
Good morning. I'm Dolores Salas, parent of a son with multiple disabilities and also the founder of Parent University, found in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My son, Albert, who is now 31 years old, when he was in high school, they didn't have services. So I started Parent University. So I help parents to get services and make things happy and structured in their child's life. And I did this until Albert grew up from high school. And after he graduated, I quit, not knowing I would have a granddaughter born with cerebral palsy. So when I started going to her school, I saw the same thing going on with her. So I started Parent University again. I decided I would just open up an office here at 3020 West Philippe. And Parent University have been very successful, where I went from knowing 100 people with disability loved ones to 800 in less than a year. The mission of Parent University is to provide hope, opportunity to structure and keep power in families, work and build trust in the relationships and creativity, and never give up. Organize groups of parents and family members to manage stress of parenting when you have a child with an intellectual or developmental disability. The vision of Parent University is to dedicate to family direct support so they won't generate stress and they can share hope and acknowledgments to reach the goal to improve the quality of life for their loved ones in the community. Parent University have 3 components. We have our brown component, that's for children under 14 years old, silver component for children 15 to 21, and our gold component is for people 22 and up. This way everybody will get the proper resources available to them, and I've hosted several events, all components come together. Example, Special Abilities Fashion Show, Hats and Heels for parents, Thanksgiving luncheon for high school students, staff, and parents, future planning sessions here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin Dells, and Stevens Point. The training sessions help the family socialize and build trust in making decisions in the community and at home. During the COVID, I had a drive-by resources fair. This was a great way to keep families updated on their new changes and help with changes due to COVID. Although COVID-19 pandemic has kept people from seeing friends and family members in person, with the right level of support and the strong relationships in my families, they did not only survive, they have made it clear that they could thrive. With virtual community opportunities that help build confidence and improve connections in the community. You know, my parents, they're really caregivers because they're taking care of their loved one. They go through more than they will ever tell you. They give up a lot and rarely have a social life. They can get sick and emotionally worn out. It's a lot for one person, and you will never know until you have done that type of work. So with them being a part of Parent University, they kind of get that social stigma where when they come together with their component, they have people they can share with, people they can laugh with, people they can talk to, and also sometimes cry with. But most of the time, it's all happy cries. You know what you need. Don't be afraid to ask for it. Enjoy the conference. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Jones. I am the president and CEO of Soul Touching Experiences, which is a organization centered around public policy, economics, and race and ethnicity and disability. I'm also a person with a disability with cerebral palsy. So in this time that we are living in, there have been a lot of challenges that people have faced, a lot of upheaval, disruptions in their services, disruption in daily routines, and people wondering where, when, and where, and how are we going to get through this. But one of the things that has come from this is that people have learned resilience. Not that we haven't known resilience, but now we see it in practice. What is it like to be a parent who has to worry about a child with a disability and not know about services? What is it like to suddenly realize that you are distant from people who you may have thought, well, I'll see them tomorrow. And now, because of where we are, the saying of tomorrow's never promised is now more reality. But even with the challenges, the opportunities that have arisen from people being socially distant or needing to be more cautious about how they interact with people, is that people are appreciating the human connection. People are appreciating how much it is to be connected to family and friends. And that also goes to, now people understand what we as people with disabilities have been talking about forever. The need to be able to connect with your friends. The need to be able to socialize, to go to where you want to go, hang out, to be able to participate in your politics, your governance. So the challenges that we face have been many, but the opportunities that are there, you can now vote by mail. It's being pushed even harder. You can now make sure that your voice is heard. So when people talk about What are you going to do? Now everybody's looking for accessibility in voting. So as a person with a disability in the disability community, we have always been the leaders in the cutting edge community. And now more so than ever, people are recognizing that fact. But the one thing that I want people to understand is that as much as the challenges are, and as much as difficulties as we've been having, this has also given us an opportunity to look into the future. Post-pandemic, what is it like to have a child with an IEP and not be able to get services? What is it like to be able to have your child be able to have a day program and not be able to do it? Those things meaning that we can think about this going forward. How do we make sure that those things don't cease in terms of crisis? How do we make sure that people who depend on routine in order for their own mental health and for their own family's health, how do we make sure that those things go forward post-pandemic? So as much as it may be doomsday or wowsy woo-woo from an old cartoon when I was a kid, this is a time for people to really use the beautiful ability to be creative. And how do we connect differently if we are socially distant? How do we maintain family ties in an age where you don't know if you're going to be the one to either translate or not? How do you do those things? This is where the disability community has always excelled, because we have always needed to adapt to environmental and socioeconomic conditions. We've always needed to adapt. And so now, all of those life experiences you can now offer to the rest of the world. So all of those life experiences about how do you adapt when you can't get to see your family. And it used to be we couldn't get there because it was not accessible. Now we just can't get there. So all of those challenges that we've had 30 years of the ADA, 50 years of my life, 100 years of disability work. Now the expertise that the world is looking for rests in your hands. And that is the beautiful thing coming out of a tragic situation, is that everything that you learned, you can now use for yourself and impart and be a wealth of resources for the rest of the community.
Our LGBTQ communities.
Hi everybody, I'm Tisha Kelsey and I work for Outreach, the LGBTQ Community Center in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm here to talk about the ABCs of LGBTQ today, and so we're going to start with L. L is for lesbian. Lesbians are women who find other women sexually attractive. And then we have G for gay. Gay men find men sexually attractive. Bisexual has changed a little bit over the years. It used to just be if you were bisexual, you found both men and women to be sexually attractive. But now there are way more genders. And so being bisexual means that you just find any of those two genders sexually attractive. Cisgender is if you wake up in the morning and you agree with what the doctor said when you were born. If the doctor said, hey, it's a girl, and you wake up thinking, hey, I'm a woman or girl, you're cisgender. Same for men. Then we have T for trans. Now, transgender people wake up in the morning and they think, whoa, the doctor got it all wrong. Their assigned sex at birth is not their gender identity. And so these people could have a sex assigned at birth of male and their gender identity could be female. Transgender is also an umbrella term for non-binary, gender non-conforming, two spirits, many things where there's not just a binary system, male or female. And that brings us to queer. Q for queer. Queer is kind of an umbrella term. It's used more for millennials and younger, and it means anybody who's not identifying as just male or just female. So if you're gender nonconforming, if you're transgender, if you're non-binary, you might be queer. Then we have I for intersex. Now, intersex might be something new to you. So intersex people are born with sexual organs that are ambiguous. The doctor is not sure if they're male or female, or they're born with both male and female sexual organs, or the doctor looks and is just like, well, it doesn't look like exactly what I picture a penis to look like, so maybe they're intersex. Now, there are 87,000 babies born every year that are intersex. And so you times that by the age that you are, and you start to see that you've met intersex people. You just haven't known. And so we're very happy in the LGBTQ world that our intersex friends are becoming loud and proud. Now we're going to talk about the differently abled. These are people that have cognitive or developmental delays or disabilities. And I'm here to tell you that just because you're differently abled does not mean you give up your sexuality card. It does not mean that you give up your right to have a gender identity, because it's just not true. You can have autism and be gay. So don't you let anybody tell you that you don't have a sexuality or you can't be a different gender than what the doctor assigned at birth. That brings us to pronouns. So pronouns are how we identify people and how they want to be identified. There are 50 plus pronoun sets, and a set is like he, him, his, or she, her, hers, or they, them, theirs. There's more than 50 of those. We're not going to get them all memorized, and we don't need to. What we need to do is talk to people, and when they say to us, please refer to me in they, them, their, we need to do it. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of being an ally. And so I'm really happy to talk to you for this couple of minutes, and I hope the rest of your conference goes really well. Thank you.
My name is Lydia XZ Brown. I use they, them pronouns or just my name. Today, I'm wearing a shirt that says, "Nothing about us without us," a slogan of the disability rights movement for a very long time. In my work, I am a writer, an educator, a lawyer, a community organizer, a community builder, a cultural worker, a teacher, a friend. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I'd like to share a little bit about my experiences. I use the word non-binary or genderqueer to describe myself. And what that means is that the labels of woman and man both do not work for me. My gender is something else. It is something in between, and it's something totally different from both woman and man. But this can be very hard to move through the world because people often assume that I don't really know what I'm talking about. Sometimes people know that because I'm autistic, that they think that means I can't understand my gender. They think that that means that I've been brainwashed by somebody into believing that I'm a non-binary person, instead of that many of us, even if we have many other things going on in our lives, we definitely know what our genders are like. And we know how our identity works, and we know how our bodies and our brains work. But this can also create issues in everyday life too. Because my name is Lydia, and sometimes I look small and my voice sounds higher in the ways that voices can sound higher or lower, people assume that that means I have to be a woman. And I get called she all the time. And during the pandemic, when we're in video meetings all the time too, I can say my name over and over again. I can tell people that my pronouns are they, and people will still call me she and a woman and a lady. And that might seem really small and not very important, but it's actually really upsetting because it happens over and over and over again. And the message is basically that I'm not who I say I am, and that I don't really know who I am. And for me, I want people to understand that what someone looks like doesn't determine what their gender is. It doesn't determine what pronouns they use, and it doesn't determine who they are. And you can't always know based on somebody's name or what they look like what the best way is to talk about that person. And if someone asks you to change the way that you talk about them, it's basic respect to consider transitioning that. But I found it very frustrating for me because even in disability advocacy spaces, I'll often be the only one. And that makes it a lot harder to speak up and a lot harder to be listened to.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the complex and ongoing connections and intersections between our disabled community and trans, queer, and asexual communities. Many people do not understand the history and the role of disability and of ableism, that is, of disability oppression, throughout US history. Ableism means an entire system of structural, systemic, and institutional power, wherein people who are considered to be healthy, strong, sane, intelligent, or normal experience social, political, cultural, and economic power at the direct expense of people who are instead considered to be sick, deficient, disordered, or broken. Ableism teaches us which kinds of people's bodies and minds are valuable and worthy and desirable, and on the other hand, which kinds of people's bodies and minds are instead expendable or disposable. An ableist logic, that is, ideas about people's bodies and minds and their inherent value, has always been a part of all other forms of violence, discrimination, and oppression. For a long time, the queer, trans, and asexual communities have predicated our humanity on the statement that to be queer, trans, or asexual is part of the natural human experience, that it is not a mental illness to be queer, trans, or asexual, and that therefore nothing is wrong with us. And to be very clear, it is of course true that to be queer, trans, or asexual is not the same thing as to be psychiatrically disabled or to have a mental illness. And for a long time, likewise, disabled people and disabled community has often put ourselves out there in the world of saying, don't discriminate against us. We deserve to be treated as equals and as peers in society because we are normal like other people. We can do jobs like other people. We can work like other people. We can go to school like other people. We can get married and have families. And often the implication is to get heterosexual married and have families in the most traditional sense of having a family like everyone else. That is, we also have a long history of saying that we deserve rights and freedoms because we're normal, like whoever else is over there. And all that does from both communities' experiences is serve to further sever ties, to disrupt potential solidarity, and to prevent us from recognizing our collective and our common experiences, and therefore where our struggles are interconnected and where our freedom is bound up together.
Almost 100 years ago, the highest court in the country had an important case called Buck v. Bell. And in that case, a woman with intellectual disabilities had been sterilized to make sure that she could never become pregnant and never have children. And the court decided that this was a good thing because they believed that people with disabilities should not be allowed to have children and that people with disabilities shouldn't exist. They thought that if people with disabilities had children, the children would be likely to also have disabilities. This is part of a belief system that we sometimes use the word eugenics for. What eugenics means is trying to decide what kinds of people should exist in the world and what kinds of people shouldn't. For many of us as people with disabilities, this often comes out in terms of people believing that we should not be allowed to have children and that people like us should not be allowed to exist. This is part of a larger scale issue in the world, where for a very long time, over the last 100 years and continuing today, different people and even some governments have tried outright to prevent whole groups of people from having children and continuing to exist. We also use the word genocide to talk about this. And this is an important and big word. And what it means is when governments and people try to prevent a whole community from existing, when they try to wipe us out. This is horrifying, but unfortunately it's part of our history, and it's why disability rights
disability justice, and self-advocacy are so important in fighting not only for our right to be heard, but for our right to live, for our right to exist, for our communities to be on the earth for who we are, instead of being treated like we don't even deserve to be counted as human. And when we think about what lies ahead for disabled community, for what we need to be fighting for, my exhortation is always the same. We need to be fighting for a world in which those who are at the margins of the margins, those who have the least, those who are the most marginalized, the most impacted, those who are never included, who are never present in the room, are front and center in the conversation, and where all of us, but especially those who have been most excluded from experiencing even a small bit of what freedom or justice are like, are able to live fully, meaningfully, and authentically without fear, that we are able to live as ourselves, that we are able to live self-determined lives, to have control over our own destinies, to be able to exercise our own autonomy and agency, to live lives of dignity, to live lives of value, to live lives of belonging in the communities that we choose to belong to experience, to receive, and to offer love, care, access, rest, and support, to be able to experience justice and freedom as freely as the air that we breathe. This I believe and I fight for everyone, because I believe we each are worth it and we each deserve it. And to do that work requires constant processes and commitment of solidarity between and across all of our myriad movements and communities, because we do not get free until we are all free. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Denise Jess, the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. I'm also a person who is legally blind. I'm a mom of 2 daughters, both of whom are now young adults, and my wife and I recently celebrated our 30th anniversary. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm also a person with white skin. These are all important parts of who I am, and they help shape how I think about my world. As a woman with a disability and a lesbian, there have been lots of challenges in my life. Today, I'm thinking about my daughters and when I was a young mom, and the challenges that I faced that were primarily based on people's attitudes. Some people were very anxious about whether I, as someone with a visual impairment, could safely raise my girls, help them cross busy streets, teach them to ride their bikes, help them with their schoolwork, or even if I'd give them the right amount of medicine when they were sick. There were other people, sometimes in my family, sometimes friends, sometimes doctors or teachers or complete strangers, who feared that because my daughters were being raised by 2 women, they'd suffer from not having a man in the household as a role model. There were people who asked us, even in front of our daughters, who was the real mom? Because they could not believe that there simply were just 2 moms in our family. But being a lesbian and someone who is legally blind made me a great mom, I think, because it helped me to be so very aware of teaching my girls how to meet the challenges of other people's beliefs and attitudes with persistence and kindness. My girls learned what it meant to be respectful, curious, and kind to those different from themselves, and to say something when they felt something seemed unfair or inequitable. While there were certainly many people who doubted my ability to be a good parent, there were many who were on my team, who were in my cheering section, who knew that all would be just fine, that we'd have our ups and downs just like any other family. These people were my allies, the people who believed in me, who challenged me to be my best and supported me in those hard times. My invitation to each of you is for you to find a way to be an ally, to be a true friend to someone who differs from you, to learn from them, help to be an advocate, and support their liberation and freedom.
Horak, waniwina, hanainach guina, wa iniginap we.
Thank you for listening to our stories
and visiting our communities.
By celebrating our differences.
The more we discover our similarities
and recognize that we are all part of one community.
One community.
One community.
One community.
One community.
Thank you and have a great conference. Now go and check out our exhibitors, micro businesses, and hangout rooms. Bye, everyone.